Good afternoon, guys. This is an intermediate breakdown on MARK. That's Remark Holdings. I recently heard about this, so I thought I'd do a quick intermediate breakdown on it to give you some text. So first of all, I am on the day chart. So what that means is every single one of these candlesticks that you see here, again, candlesticks, if you're not familiar, that's just each one of these ticks you see. Every time it moves a candlestick, that means it's moved an entire day. So that's a representation of a full 24-hour period. So what I've done here is I've drawn two things, a Fibonacci and a box. So let's start with just the box. So if you could look at this and just look at it as if it was a building. So this is the data from last September all the way to current market price. So when I say a building, what I mean by that is there's levels here, and you can see where the market stops and breaks out, stops and breaks out, stops. So it's a lot like a building in a house. It's really easy to move when you're on a floor. You can jump up and down, you can move very freely between those floors, but it's really hard to break through the actual ceiling or the floor and move to the next section. So a lot of times the market acts like this, and Fibonacci is probably the best representation to show you what it would look like. So if I just go ahead and add that Fibonacci back in, you can see that support and resistance. Now you can see the red area up here on the high, the yellow area, and the green area. So in this case, because it is in a downward trend, the green area is representing a green light, it continuing short. So currently, unfortunately, if you are in any positions on this, it is in a short position, just meaning that it looks like it's going to continue going down, losing value. Right now it's sitting at about right around that $5 mark, and I wouldn't be surprised to see it go down to this $2 mark. There is a little bit of support in between, right around $3, so there might be a stoppage pattern in there. There's also some support where it's sitting just recently, which was about $4.45. So if it breaks through $4.45, I would expect $3. If it breaks through $3, I would expect all the way down to $2. And when I say a breakthrough, all I mean is a candlestick fully closing beyond. So if you see this maybe as a support right here, just as an example, here's some support across the low, and you can see this candle cleared all of that, broke through it. It then came up and retested it a couple of times and then continued short to the next level. So this is very simple level to level support and resistance trading. What I'd really like to see here, and when I'm going to start even looking maybe at taking some positions myself, is if we start to see a breakout, especially on this 38% level. So 38% on Fibonacci. If we get a breakout, typically on that means it should go towards 61%. If it breaks out on 61, usually it goes all the way to the 100. So those are the two levels. So those levels are represented by $9.53. And it's also right around 670. You could argue maybe a little bit higher at 686, right in those two ranges. So if we see a candlestick break out on those, that's when I'm most interested in this market. One other thing I wanted to touch on, though, is this is an absolutely wild market. I mean, the volatility is pretty crazy. We don't see this often with Forex and in currency, like with the high volatility, unless it's a very low liquid market, so low liquidity market, maybe like a peso or something like that, maybe the ruble. With the larger currencies, USD and the larger fiats, we don't see this type of volatility. So when I mean volatility, if you guys haven't looked at this is what I'm talking about. You can see all the data we were just looking at was just this little tiny section. So I'm now on the weekly chart. Each one of these candlesticks represents an entire week. So you can see way over here, we had a breakout. This consolidated for a very long time. And this most recent move was a breakout move on all of this resistance back that it created all the way back since 2009. And even more interesting, you can see the high on this has been incredibly high. So this volatility hasn't happened for quite a while. You can see the violent moves in this market, which means that we can make a ton of money if you get in at the right time, right? So as far as entry points right now, I do like to look at this most recent, this little section right here as a breakout move, and maybe this is just a retrace. Retraces typically only go about 61% of the entire move. So if this moved all the way up to this high, usually it only comes back about 61% of that move and then continues. In this case, we've gone a little bit lower than that, so that would make me a little nervous, and that's why I'm waiting, like I was mentioning, for this breakout right here. So if I can represent that 61%. If you were to look at this backwards, so if you're not familiar with Fibonacci, if you were to look at this as the 100 here and the 0 here, if you were to turn that upside down, the 0 would actually be on top, and 38.2 would now be 61%, 61.8%, right? So this level for me, obeying the rules on this weekly chart, so I'm just going to step back to the weekly chart, 61.8% should be right here, right? So if that 61% was held, I would feel a lot more comfortable. Because we popped through, I'm a little nervous, but if it does come back and break that, that'll be really a first indication that this should continue long and continue long for maybe even a very long period of time. And then, of course, as far as a breakout short or going in the opposing direction, there's really no opportunities here because there's no level. There's not a whole bunch of levels to trade to. You know, if we were to look for maybe a stoppage right on that $2, if it gets all the way down to $2, that might be a good wholesale price, if you will. But otherwise, that's really what I'm looking at on this mark. I like the setup. I don't love the setup yet. So just to recap, breaks out of this right around $6.66. Oh, we're $6.66. If it breaks out on that, I'll start to look for maybe a position myself. Otherwise, though, it's looking short until really that factor happens. And it could, the two levels that we were looking at were 440, and it could come all the way down to around that $3 and maybe even down to 2. I mean, that's pretty low, though. So that's your quick technical breakdown on Mark. I wish you guys the best in trading, and hopefully this helps just a little bit. Take care.